Hey, hi, hello, welcome back. A few months ago it turned summer where I am, and I wanted to do a few illustrations that kind of capture that vibe of summer. And I thought, well, what better way to capture summer than through beaches? And what better way to find beaches than on islands? Thus, since we are drawing Pokémon, I have once again come to the islands of Japan in search of references that I can turn into illustrations. Now, first and most importantly, look at this cartoon-ass car, and secondly, let's talk about exactly what I'm looking for. I have no idea. I am just looking for something. I don't particularly plan these things. If something comes up, then it looks nice, I'll draw it, and if not, then I'll continue looking until I do find something. All these islands were just northeast of Tokyo, and you could literally see the different islands across on the horizon. So I just spent some time jumping from island to island, looking for different references, and it was extremely beautiful, but awfully difficult to find something that I wanted to turn into an illustration. Which is often the case because, of course, Google Earth doesn't really prioritize quality, but that's kind of the fun for me. I'm kind of looking for these plain, boring looking pictures, and I want to find something interesting in them, bring it out, and turn them into actual, pleasant to look at illustrations. Even the ones I already have done, while I still think they're pretty good, they're not as interesting as the ones based off references of Pinterest, for example. But one of my goals as an artist is to be able to bring out beauty in the mundane, which has proven to be quite difficult, but I'm stubborn. It also fills me with quite a bit of pride to know that these pictures are entirely mine though. They're not based on other people's existing talents. You know, other people, the references I get off Pinterest, they're already refined. These are entirely mine. And to interrupt that train of thought, check this picture I took right here. I didn't use it, but it's pretty. But back to what I was saying. I like to feel that my illustrations are entirely mine. And while of course it's not like it's inappropriate to use references, I use references all the time, and it doesn't make the art less. I just get a certain degree of satisfaction from feeling that they're particularly personal. And while yes, I didn't take the pictures, one day I will, but for the time being, Google Earth is what I've got to work with, and thus, I'll work with what I got. After all, most importantly, I enjoy doing this. It's fun. I mean, look at how pretty this road is. Definitely a bucket list destination now. And funny enough, this island is still technically classified as Tokyo. Who would have thought the largest city in the world could be so scenic with nature? Continuing onwards, I found a red thing, and then turning around I realized I'm basically in Jurassic Park. Like, wow. And then I looked around a little bit more, and I think I found what is probably my favorite find yet. Frickin' dolphins. And while there's no real way I can use them in an illustration, it was still a pretty awesome find. Anyway, I continued to explore this island and hopping over to a few other ones, and for a while there was a lot of nothing. Very pretty, but a lot of nothing. While zoomed out, I noticed a little dot in the middle of the ocean. And, going to explore it, I think I found the most incredible thing I've ever come across on Google Earth. America. But not just America. No. Jack's Fish, Shrimp and Chicken. Daily lunch specials for $6.99. Anyway, back to it. This island was particularly beautiful. I knew if I was going to find a reference anywhere on these islands, it would be this one right here. Then I found some creepy ass, whatever you would call this. And I thought, oh, I could do something with Gengar here or some ghost Pokemon. And I really did think about it. And maybe I'll come back to it in the future, but that wasn't what I was going for now, so. Then I came across this, and this was kind of perfect. This was everything I was looking for. It's not usually something you come across on Google Earth. It's bad quality, but I could improve on that. And I thought, maybe I found it. I looked around a little bit more off screen, and I came across a sunken ship. And I just wanted to show that because that's pretty damn cool. And since I was recording again, I thought I would go to one last island. And I found something strange. America. But this time in their other natural form. It's funny, in this video, looking through Japan on Google Earth, I found the duality of America. Fast foods and military. Anyway, here's the reference. Now, first things first, this one was easy, but one of my favorites. In fact, probably my favorite I've ever done. Not because it was easy necessarily, but because it was very simple. I often find myself favoring simple art. One, because of how appealing it looks, but more than that, because of the simplicity in the emotion it evokes. And while, like everything in art, there is a time and place for chaos, and it can be very appealing when done right, simple illustrations for me evoke a far more tangible emotion. I don't have to think about it, it's just blatant and digestible. And just for clarification, when I say simple art, I mean like landscapes, not modern art nonsense. I'm talking about the art pieces that don't say much. There's no greater message to them, but they evoke something in you that a lot of people can relate to, whether that be a sense of comfort, discomfort, peacefulness, solitude, whatever it might be. It's the art pieces that are universally relatable. And I know how that sounds. I'm drawing a Pokémon illustration talking about how relatable it is. But really it's the scene itself, right? It's the landscape. It's the beach late at night, watching the stars with friends. I haven't had that experience myself, but I can certainly imagine what it would feel like. I mean, maybe it's because I'm the artist and I drew this piece, and therefore I feel like I can look at this scene and I can imagine exactly how warm this night would be. The breeze of the ocean dew, my feet sinking into the still warm sand. I feel like I can perfectly imagine what the waves crashing sounds like, and the smell of sea salt and fresh air that shoots through your body. This image evokes a strange feeling. It's not sad, but it's not happy either. It's something adjacent to nostalgia. And why that is? Well, I think it's because I imagine this type of experience where while you're still in it, you can't help but think about how you'll look back at this moment when it's over. And it's strange. It's a double-edged sword. In some aspects, the fleeting nature of a moment makes me appreciate it more. And on the other hand, I feel as if it takes me out of the moment. Sometimes I feel as if I anticipate nostalgia long before I actually experience it in regards to a given moment. And I suppose that pre-nostalgia is that feeling that's not sad, but it's not happy either. And it's a powerful feeling. It's something I dread, but I don't dislike. I often struggle to put my thoughts into words. Truthfully, I think my thoughts are incredibly simplistic, and I overcomplicate them because I feel the simplicity of their explanation does not do them justice. But I recently picked up a book, Wabi Sabi. I heard about it through a meme, And at first I didn't give it much thought, but after reading only half of this book, I feel like I understand the feeling I try to evoke in my illustrations far more, which is the strangest thing to say. Like I'm only recognizing what my intentions were regarding an illustration after it's long complete. Doesn't really make sense, it sounds contradictory, but it's true. I knew what I wanted to evoke, but I didn't know how to explain it, and perhaps I still don't. But wabi in wabi-sabi comes as close as I ever have, which can be described as tranquil simplicity. Now, that is a very, very bare description, and it goes much further in depth than that. But for the sake of this discussion, think of it like that. That, in essence, is exactly what I have sought to bring out in these illustrations. And here is a direct quote from the book that aligns perfectly with my thoughts on this illustration. Have you ever enjoyed the twilight by the ocean shore, as you observe the sun disappearing, allowing the stars to shine, as you listen to the sounds of the surf or breathe in the sea air? Did you feel like you were connected to nature, like you were neither adding nor eliminating anything, simply forming part of it? That feeling is exactly how I imagined this scene. Now, on the other hand, my art directly goes against the idea of wabi-sabi art, or rather my mindset towards art, which, for the sake of a quick description once again, is essentially the notion that the little imperfections and mistakes make the illustration all the more authentic and valuable. Again, this is a very, very bare bones description, and it goes far more in depth than that. I say mine goes against this because I hyper-focus on details. I literally spend hours strenuously and meticulously fixing little things, and even when the illustration is finished, I'm always noticing more imperfections and things that I think need correcting. And that's why I think the idea of wabi-sabi is really beneficial to me. It allows me to appreciate my art far more. And of course, it's not a concept that I even remotely properly grasp, but I certainly think it's beneficial to both my mindsets regarding my art and my art itself. So, with that all being said, I would also like to preference, I hate pretentiousness, especially in art. Majority of my pieces, there is no greater and deeper meaning that you have to think about. My goal is for someone to look at my art and feel the exact emotion I want them to feel, which is often very simplistic. If I draw something peaceful, I want people to look at it and think it's peaceful. I don't want people to have to think they have to determine some greater meaning. My art is simple, and as such I want people to view it as so. In truth, I don't want anything more for people to look at this piece in particular and think something along the lines of, wow, cute Pokémon, or pretty skies, or beautiful ocean. Now then, for a very abrupt change of pace. I went around looking a few more islands for my next piece, and I found this island, and I don't know what this island is called, I don't remember, but it was straight out of Princess Mononoke. It was phenomenal. I mean, just look at this. I've spoken a lot about bucket list locations in this video, but this island is hands down the top. I mean, genuinely, look at this place. It feels like there is meant to be a giant wolf on this rock right here. While I didn't end up using any of these mountains as references, I think 100% my next one is gonna be set in these mountains. I mean, it just can't not be. I spent some more time looking around this island and nothing else really stuck out too much. A couple of waterfalls which were really cool, but other than that, nothing much. Until finally, I found this, and I thought, wow, those mountains are stunning. So I thought maybe I could make something work out of this. I looked around a little bit more, but nothing stood out. And here we are, here's the reference. It's not the greatest, but I had a pretty good idea of a scene that I wanted to illustrate. Starting off as always, just with a real rough sketch, I had an idea to change up the cars and instead of whatever that car was, add a K-truck and some sort of blue-collar worker. I wanted to kind of capture the vibe that this was an everyday scene, for the blue-collar worker at least, and then the Growlithe and the Pidgey were just adding a little bit more something to an otherwise average day. In the previous illustration, I went into quite a bit of depth as to what type of vibe I was trying to capture in that one. This one is not as deep. This one is simply I wanted to capture the vibe of an everyday scene. Fairly mundane, but beautiful in the mundane. For the first time, I tried to use watercolor brushes on this piece. I usually never use watercolor brushes, but I'm wanting to get into gouache painting, so I figured I may as well see what it's like in a digital format. And to be honest, I really like it for drawing things in the distance. Up close is not my favorite, but in terms of like the mountains, I found the watercolor brushes were perfect. Although it does take a minute to get used to, which I am still most definitely not used to yet. The mountains came out really nice with the watercolor brushes, but the trees in the immediate background, they were a bit challenging. I ended up using my go-to normal brushes for those. But it's mixed with a fair amount of watercolor and I think it looks kinda nice. But with the rest of the piece I just stuck to what I know. I decided to change that concrete platform thing, whatever that might be in the background, into a beach just because it looks a lot nicer. Finally, I got started on the truck, which was quite difficult. Obviously the truck wasn't in the original, so I got a bunch of reference photos that I could use. I also made it quite a bit bigger to make it look closer so I could go into more detail. And the rendering I wasn't really happy with, so I used the car in the original reference piece just to get a kind of an idea of how the shadows should look, although obviously a very different shape, but just get a general idea. And I grabbed the colors as well from it. And this is what I'm always harping on about how I want to take these references and improve on them and make them interesting. Like, if I had gone with that original car, it would have been a lot more boring, but changing it to this little truck gives the image such more personality. Because I mean, look at the little truck. It somehow does have personality. It's cute. It makes the image a lot more lively. And on top of that, by simply changing what type of car it is, it changes the scene entirely, right? Now, with making it a truck and a blue-collar worker, it's obviously some sort of dock or some sort of working environment. Like, who knows what the original was, why that car was there in the first place. But by me changing the car, it reshapes the entire scene and tells its own story. It alone, just being a truck that is obviously being used for some sort of work, it implies that beyond the borders of this image there's more going on. Maybe there's, I don't know, a bunch of fishermen, and they've just come back from a morning's worth of fishing, and they're loading up their haul. So often, it's the little details that reshape the whole context of a given scene. I put a lot of details into this truck. In fact, it took so long that I've actually spent longer on it than the entire rest of this piece, which is saying something, because there was a lot to get to in this one. The key to capturing realism in the truck here was the lighting, and of course that's with most things, but particularly the bounce light from the concrete. If you look at the reference, the shadowed area of the car has a great deal of reflective light, which is more difficult to capture than to simply use the color match tool, which I do use, but in my opinion, it doesn't quite work as great for stuff like bounce light. It's better to use whatever knowledge of color theory you might have and just experiment for a while until it works. Something I battle with quite a bit, which you'll see when we get to the dude and the Pokémon, is that I tend to shy away from drastic value shifts, which is not a good thing because the juxtaposition of the high value and the low value lighting serves a great purpose in realism and creating focal points. Since I drew this illustration, which was like a month ago, I've been actively working on that, trying to improve on it, but I still find that I often over-rely on correction layers to compensate, which there's nothing wrong with, of course it's a feature for a reason, but I'm wanting to delve more into traditional painting, particularly gouache painting, which of course there is no correction layers for, and that value mastery is something that I'm very clearly lacking that I want to get a better grasp on. Furthermore, I have come to the conclusion that light in general is probably one of the most vital things to master in art, which sucks because it is probably one of the most difficult things to understand. I mean, I don't understand it in the slightest, I just do what I think looks right. Since this illustration, I've done a few pieces where the lighting is intentionally quite drastic. I'm trying to get a better understanding of it, and to be honest, I don't think I ever will. I don't think light is something that people ever really understand, or maybe they do, maybe I just don't, but I think that's fine. I think you just have to learn how to use it in given scenarios, which most of the time I think is a guessing game unless you have a reference. This wetsuit apron thing that this dude is wearing took a long while to get right. It was just a lot of experimenting until something looked good, and eventually I think I got it looking pretty good. Now remember what I said about the small details giving a greater context to the scene. This thing that he's wearing almost looks like it's been wet quite a bit, so clearly this is indicating that he's been out on the water, if that wasn't already apparent by the basket he's carrying, which presumably is holding some sort of catch or some gear or something along those lines. I thought about it a little bit, and considering that this is technically a Pokemon world, right, where there's Pokemon, the implications of a fisherman coming back with a catch is interesting, because it sort of implies they've been catching Pokemon, which is a topic I don't know if I want to delve into. But at the same time, I distinctly remember that in Season 1 of Pokémon, there were actual fish. I remember it. So I choose to believe that they were not catching Magikarp that they would then turn into sushi. Which doesn't matter anyway, because I remember when Team Rocket and Ash and the gang try to eat the Magikarp, and turns out you can't because they're too bony. So let's just say they were catching normal fish, which I did a bit of research on, and yes, real fish do exist in the Pokemon world, apparently. according to Reddit, so, take it with a grain of salt. I also found out Farfetch'd are endangered because they're delicious. Finally, I actually started on Pokémon, and it took super quick. In fact, in this 10-minute time lapse, only about a minute of it is actually me drawing the Pokémon. The rest is just the background. Which is fine, because truth be told, well, I say truth be told, but it's actually probably quite evident that I just really like drawing landscapes. In fact, the Pokémon is kind of just an excuse to draw landscapes. But the Pokémon makes it unique and a way for me to combine two of my favorite things, Pokémon and landscape illustrations. And I view this as all just as practice, to be honest. For one day, eventually, when I travel the world and find real life landscapes that I can then turn into illustrations. Probably also Pokemon themed. But for the time being, Pinterest and Google Earth is my best friend. And that's that. I'm pretty damn happy with this one. I don't particularly love the Growlithe, but that's really my only complaint about this one. In general, I'm pretty happy with it. I also added something in the foreground to give it a little something more.